When people think about Donkey Kong, if they're not thinking about the arcade original, they're thinking about the Country series. Or in some cases, a revival of the Country series, or hell, even Donkey Kong 64. But for me, when Donkey Kong is brought up, my mind drifts to a long forgotten spin-off, and all of my fond memories with it. For those unfamiliar with it, I'd like to introduce you to this little hidden gem by the name of Donkey Kong Jungle Climber. To truly understand this game, I will have to give a little context as to why it even exists in the first place.
If you've been a Nintendo fan on the internet for any length of time, you've likely heard the story of Rare's buyout, so I'll spare you the details. All you need to know is that after Microsoft doomed Rare to a life of making shitty games, the Donkey Kong franchise was in limbo. This led to Donkey Kong games being made by a bunch of different developers, being passed around like a blonde at a frat party. This of course led to the franchise going in some weird directions, which included the prequel of sorts to this game, DK King of Swing.
So why am I looking at Jungle Climber instead of King of Swing? Well, I guess I was feeling a little sentimental, and I don't really have the same bond with the GBA entry as I do its DS sequel. Also, Jungle Climber was actually my introduction to the Donkey Kong franchise, and what a fucking introduction it was. I felt kind of alienated when I played Country Returns on the 3DS because I kind of thought that all DK games were like this. Of course, I've grown to appreciate all of the other DK games now, but I still think Jungle Climber doesn't get the respect it deserves. But I've rambled long enough, let's get into why I love this game so much.
Jungle Climber is an extremely hard game to describe in terms of gameplay, so I'll let the footage do the talking. If I was to define this game with a genre, I guess I could call it a puzzle platformer, but even that's pushing it. Sure, there are puzzle elements and platforming elements here, but there's so much more going on in and amongst that. This game is a thing all its own, and I love it for that. The primary gameplay gimmick here is using the shoulder buttons to control DK's left and right hands respectively to grab these pegs scattered across the levels to advance. The rest of the game is essentially basic platforming, but every level is expertly crafted to keep the conventional platforming to a minimum and prioritise what is arguably the most unique aspect of this game, the horizontal platforming. Horizontal platforming has been an aspect of platformers for as long as they've been around, but this game does something wholly unique with the concept, and it kinda surprises me that more people haven't attempted this kind of thing since. I see how some people could find it gimmicky, but honestly, I love it. It's really fun and satisfying to go from peg to peg, and then hold down the shoulder buttons together and press A to unleash an attack on an enemy. The controls are oddly fluid. DK almost glides through these levels, and while it can take a while to adjust to both the controls and gameplay, they both become second nature after a couple levels. I should probably talk about this game's story too. If you thought the core gameplay concepts of this game were weird, wait till you hear about the plot. The game opens with the DK crew just hanging out, having a good time on Sun Sun Beach. But after a while, DK and Cranky become hungry and try to figure out how to get some food, at which point Diddy comes running in and tells the duo that there's a giant banana on top of Sun Sun Island. So you make your way to the top and notice King K. Rool and his Kremlin gang, but they teleport away before you have time to question them. Immediately after, you're attacked by a giant flying banana and decide to shoot it down. A sentient banana then walks out of the ship and introduces himself as Zananab of the planet Plantain. He explains that he attacked because he mistook the crew for Kremlings, and thought that if he attacked he could get his crystal bananas back, which are gems with special powers. And since he destroyed his ship, he offered to help him get the gems back, and stop K. Rool's plans to rule the world.
The plot isn't the most complex in the world, but it's fun and wacky in that classic Saturday morning cartoon kind of way. It's really charming and puts a smile on my face every time I replay this game.
And it's aided by the sheer creativity on display with the game's levels. Sure, you have the stereotypical ice and cave areas you'll find in any old platformer adjacent game, but you also travel through fiery volcanoes, ancient ruins, and plenty of other original and cool areas. Some of my favourites of which are these weird mirror worlds and toy box areas that are accessed by going through these portals that Zananab opens. They're so creatively designed and visually striking. I love stuff like this in games. These toy levels specifically have been stuck in my mind since first playing this game way back when I was 8, which I find incredible. I've only really dabbled in the country games, but if the levels are this fun to traverse and are this creative, I'm sure I'll love them too. Everything I've said about the levels, I could also say about the boss battles. You see, every time you catch up to K. Rool, he sticks one of his Kremlings on you. But these aren't just any Kremlings, these are Kremlings that are juiced up after using the power of a crystal banana. Now because the game only has roughly 6 worlds, there's only really a handful of bosses, but the few bosses you do have are absolutely incredible to fight, and serve a nice little challenge to the player. I'd say the best boss fight would have to be the second phase of the K. Rool fight. After you defeat him, he uses a crystal banana to grow larger, and shit gets intense. The music, the setting, and all the little set pieces and assets used in this fight make this boss battle feel like a real do or die moment. Speaking of which, I haven't even touched on the actual graphics of this game. This game looks absolutely beautiful to me. It employs that pre-rendered 3D model style the country games did all those years ago, and it works really well. I understand that it may be an acquired taste, but I love it, and prefer it to King of Swing's art style, which was more of a pastel pixel art type of thing, which I also really enjoy, but with a lot of the set pieces from level to level in Jungle Climber, you can tell a lot of the game was made with the art style in mind, which kind of elevates the presentation for me, as well as the rest of the game now that I think about it. It just shows how much care the developers had for the project. Everything feels so intricately placed, even the power-ups. The most common power-up you'll find in this game is these barrels containing Diddy. He's used as an extra hit of sorts, but can also be thrown to attack enemies that are further away and collect items that are just out of reach. He can also be paired with a bunch of other situational power-ups, like hammers for destroying rocks and feathers for flying. These power-ups aren't really a focal point of the game, but they do serve to spice up the gameplay a bit when things are getting stale. The final power-up you'll get is the invincibility stars. They're kinda self-explanatory. You collect these gems scattered throughout the levels, and once you get 100, you get a star, which gives you a short period of invincibility, as well as the ability to fly for some reason. You can carry up to 3 at a time, and they're kind of a double-edged sword, because while they help with giving players an option to skip sections they're stuck on, so they can keep the story moving, they're also incredibly OP and can be abused because of how easy they are to obtain. Not that you'd need to abuse their power though, because one of the few faults I found in this game was the level design, surprisingly enough. While the level design is sound overall, and is visually pleasant, actually promoting some level of exploration, a lot of the smaller areas that make up the larger levels are somewhat flawed because you can blast right through them without even having to interact with the enemies.
This is made worse by the fact invincibility stars are a thing because, in theory, you can skip most of the game with them. I know it's just been an issue for at least half the game, but it's not the end of the world because most players who actually enjoy the game will probably commit to progressing the way the developers wanted you to and actually explore. But I thought it was worth mentioning regardless because it's a very obvious oversight that can be somewhat game breaking.
Although I don't see why you'd want to rush through the levels with all the cool collectibles you can grab. You have the aforementioned gems as well as regular bananas, which are obviously the common collectible. But on top of that you have banana coins that unlock extra levels, DK coins that unlock cheats, Kong letters that give you a 1-up if you collect all 4, and oil barrels that fuel Funky's plane, which takes you to each respective island's little counterpart. You'd think with all of these collectibles present it would muddy the game, but you'd be wrong surprisingly. Each collectible fits into the levels well, and very rarely do they feel out of place. And the best part is that they're never truly a chore to collect. Some may challenge you, but you're rarely pushed to the point of getting annoyed trying to collect them. Oh, and the soundtrack. My god, the soundtrack of this game is phenomenal. It's one of my all-time favourites. While there are some misses and some tracks that blend in with others, for the most part, this soundtrack is superb. Every song fits its respective area well, and kind of helps the game flow well, because of some of the shared sounds and styles, like any good soundtrack should do.
I could honestly go on about this game forever, but I think I've said enough for now. I honestly think more people should get the chance to experience this game, so if you get the chance, check it out. It is better on original hardware, but I've heard the emulated versions aren't too bad, and the only real drawback is a lack of any real feedback from playing on a DS, for lack of a better term. But regardless of how you choose to experience this game, I hope you find it as endearing as I did, because it's one of my all-time favourites.